Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the Explicit Measures Podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello and a happy Tuesday, everybody. Happy Tuesday.
Oh, we're excited today, I guess.
I'm tired. All right, that's all I have.
Not as tired as I was last week, I'll tell you that.
It's gone. This month has gone fast. It's already the 21st. We're almost done with February.
Fun little tidbit about the weekend was my wife was going to see her sister who just had a kid. So I had number 3, the boy, and he's been fine. He's 2 years old, cries. You get him up out of the bed, or out of the crib. Well, I found out Sunday, or was it Monday morning? All of a sudden, like, I didn't hear anything, and it's like a little later. It's like 7:30, so it's later for us.
He usually gets up.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay. And I'm walking around the house, and if you've ever seen like a horror film, that's kind of what the house looked like. Like, I left my wallet on the counter. It was like every card was gone. A bag of cereal was on the counter. It was just everywhere. Like every toy, I'm like, what? Because I'm like, what? And I go, and every door's closed, so I have no idea where he is. And I finally go into our girl's room, and he's got a marker drawing on the bed.
Oh my goodness.
He figured out how to get out of the crib. And unlike the girls who would always come like right to us, he's like, I'm going to discover.
I'm just going to go and destroy things.
Yeah. So it was like, and Sarah was my wife was coming home that morning. So it's like, oh God, child. So now we're like on like child watch every morning. So
that's amazing.
I had a world.
Speaking of time flying, right? So my son wakes up this morning. His stomach's not doing well.
Uh-oh.
And we're sitting there like, oh, okay, well, I don't know why, like you're not feeling well, but I guess you're staying home for other reasons. And all of a sudden they're cleaning up breakfast, and I take they had 2 milk cartons, the old one and the new one. And the old one I grab and I undo the cap to squeeze it shut for recycling. And I'm squeezing it. I'm just like, this rancid smell comes out. I'm like, what the heck, kid? I'm like, look down, Feb 12th.
Kid was drinking goodness.
Bad milk.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah, that's probably why
you feel sick. Yeah.
Go curl up in bed. Time flying. See, like 8 days past the expiration. Just like
that. My gosh. I mean, I go a little over the expiration, but as soon as the date hits, though, I'm smelling it every day to make sure that it's like not that bad. Usually, like 2 to 3 days, you're like, okay, starting to get rid of it.
There was just a little bit. I mixed it with the new stuff. I was like, wow.
Oh no.
Ugh.
Oh no.
You're like, you're ready for college, my friend.
You are ready for college. Here's some Pop-Tarts. Go ahead and go to college.
That good bacteria in the stomach.
Oh my goodness.
Right?
Good cultures.
Oh man.
Well, you guys had scary stories. I had an interesting. Well, I again once realized that I'm way too old for this. I'm getting older now. We went snowboarding this weekend with the kids. So my eldest 2, we went up to the mountain. I was teaching my daughter to snowboard for the first time. So kind of just going through the exercises, and here's how you do it, and here's how the board works. And we have been bruised up. I'll say that there's a couple bad falls on the hill, and so we learned not to catch an edge very quickly there. That'll be something that was very quickly learned. But anyways, my calves have been like, my legs are just exhausted just since Saturday. Like they can't recover. It's just not happening.
Did you guys get snow?
We had gotten some snow like on that Wednesday, Thursday, I guess. And then it was still cold until the weekend. And then it was like during the weekend, it was like 38 to 45 or so. So it got really nice. It was actually great on the mountain.
Yeah.
But it started getting real slushy towards the end of the day. So I was like, good that we're getting close to being done. We'll call it and go home. But anyways, it was good.
Yeah, snowboarding is no joke in terms of understanding how it works, because it can't turn like you're on a longboard, because you're going to if you just quickly turn. Yeah.
As long as once you I did good. I didn't fall at all. I didn't like bust it on anything. So I felt good about that. But again, I was on like the green circles the whole time because I was helping everyone else get stuff done. So
I'm glad you know how to do it. You can teach me then, because the one time that I've tried, I realized like every time I would turn, I would catch and fall. So I was finally like, that's it. I'm not going to catch. I'm just going to go down. Well, the problem with this is you pick up more speed than you would like.
Yep. Yeah. And then when you fall, it hurts even better. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's exactly
Oh,
what happened.
man.
So it was
Yeah.
a great
Oh,
idea
man.
until like 10 seconds in. It was like, oh no.
Yeah. That was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened.
You're gonna teach
Let's
me.
catch more speed before I catch my edge. Oh, yeah.
That's called short-term, long-term thinking.
Amazing.
Ugh.
Maybe you should just take some good lessons from the lessons guy. Maybe you shouldn't listen to me for the
That is hilarious.
for the details there. Anyways, let's jump into some. Let's go through some of our sponsorship things or partnering with different events coming up here. So really quick, if you are if you're over in London, ICC Wales, if you want to go to that event, there's a great conference called SQL Bits. You can visit SQLBits.com for more information. March 14th through the 18th is when that event will be occurring, and you can get a 5% discount with the code PowerBI.tips 5. So if you're checking out and you're going to go attend the event, make sure you use PowerBI.tips 5 to be able to attend the event with 5% off. Also, there's a virtual Power BI Summit, so you can visit the globalpowerbisummit.com for a virtual conference. It'll be March 6th through 10th. They're touting the largest Power BI conference ever. So it's going to be like 130, 140 speakers, I think, somewhere around there. It's going to be a very large event. And so check out Global Power BI Summit for other details as well. All right. With that, we'll jump on in. Let's talk about our topic for today. Do your reports need to be beautiful? So I guess that's been our main topic here. Tommy, want to kick us off some ideas? Where should we take this one today?
Yeah, man. I think we've touched on this quite a few times, but I think there needs to be a conversation around. You can see a lot of like gorgeous reports on LinkedIn, and even like a lot of templates have come up where you're like, wow, like, I mean, this looks like it could be on TV, basically. Like the design, it looks so professional. And then you think about sometimes your own reports, like, well, what's that delicate balance between the design that is real professional, and I'm talking like that graphic designer, compared to the functionality? Because sometimes I've seen some of these reports going, I don't think I could, if I spent hours on this, if I could replicate this. But I think the other conversation we had was, well, do I need to? Do I need to have that much design in my report? So I think that's, yeah.
I think there's also, I think you had a good question here and kind of like leading the witness here on some of the setup today. I think one thing is to identify what is a beautiful report to you. Like what quantifies you as meaning it's really appealing to look at. Because I think you're going to find a varying degree of what does that mean to you. And so yeah.
Oh, this is objective.
There's no way.
We're not standard
pulling
here.
this in. We're not pulling this specifically into subjectiveness. Like,
hold on,
like, bro. Like, okay. I mean, go ahead, but I'm not going to land there.
Well, unfortunately, we chose a word. I think by its nature is a subjective thought. No,
I suppose.
Yeah. So
okay. I mean, Donald says, like, is fast beautiful, right? Is it beautiful that look at this? I'm producing data across, hundreds of millions of rows. I mean, there's some elegance into that part as well. I mean, there's so right. I guess I would go
Let's
after.
Try to think of a definition then.
Well, I was thinking maybe you go. There's kind of maybe two angles, right? You take does it look artistic, right? I feel like maybe that's what I was thinking about when I hear the word beautiful. Is it an artistic report, or is it a useful report? And maybe useful is not the right word there for the other half of this, but I think artistic would be a word that I would quantify, or I would leverage around. Does the report look beautiful? And so I think about myself, like when I think about good data elements, I also think, I don't know how to incorporate this in what we're talking about today, but I'll throw it out there anyways. The idea is like, you see some of these visualizations from like, it's literally a single visual that's very detailed, very well thought out. There's, gradients and colors. And so there's, when you read the article from, I don't know, whatever the newspaper or the 35.8, I think is the one that's that I'm really interested in. It's a bunch of sports statistics, and they do a bunch of predictions.
538, yeah.
Oh, 538, sorry.
Yeah.
538. that there's a whole data team that they just think about doing data and visualizations and trying to, articulate a story. And I think, to me, what resonates for me is I like the beautiful story that is occurring with the connection between what data is doing something on the visual and relating that to some sort of point that you're trying to produce. So to me, doesn't have to be like, a pretty scene, doesn't have to be like, it could be good colors, but I think there's something around like the visual itself tells me something that is meaningful and interesting to look at. And the more I look at it, the more I'm like, that's something I never saw that correlation, that connection between the different data points. So to me, that's where I would define what I would define as maybe something that looks beautiful.
I don't disagree with that, and I'm pushing back a little hard on the subjective, right? But I would say, you mentioned artistic, right? And I would say, you said artistic versus useful.
Mm-hmm.
Like the problem with artistic is, I think some of the chat was saying this too, is like, when is it done?
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I'm just doing this for flair to make it look good, then do I really need to be doing that? But like ultimately, I think what beautiful is a report that looks good. It's not distracting and uses visual controls to make digesting the insights to the end user as like quick, like as quickly as possible. Like the reason you're making it look good and the reason you're spending a bunch of time on it to make it beautiful is because you want the end user's experience to be the best experience it possibly can be. And that doesn't just mean it looks good. It means there's specific reasons why it looks good, because the intent is you're using visual indicators that we have as humans to absorb the information quickly and fast. And I think it'll be a fun discussion because there's many different ways we can do that. And you may not agree with me because apparently we're in subjective land of beauty, but like that's ultimately to me why, like, what a beautiful report is. You're making specific choices, not just going, I think green is the color today, and I'm going to use that because I'm in a kind of green mood. We'll do the 3 shades of green in all my background, and like, I don't get me wrong. Having an art background, right? I can get into painting the tapestry of a report and making it look cool for no other reason than just to make it look cool. But I don't think that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. I would say from a beautiful point of view, at least for the design of report, I would say it's beyond the simplistic normal features that would be applied in a report. And I'm talking about, and maybe you could call it complicated, but it's thinking if you've ever seen those template reports where it's like one visual actually has layered on it like 10 objects to really show something that you normally wouldn't see. And for the record, I'm not saying that beautiful means complicated, because I think you can absolutely do beautiful simplistically. But I'm saying for at least for the discussion today, is that overly design that does look really nice or really professional, that would take a lot more time and thinking. That is also, again, half the objects that are not for the functional side. There's a lot more objects on the design or on the page meant for design than it is meant for the report itself.
And I kind of like where we're taking this, because I feel like we can't necessarily pin exactly what a beautiful report is, but I think we can give reflections, or we can give aspects of what we would point towards that would make a report what we would call quote unquote beautiful. Like I think here, like I think you guys made some really good points, right? Color, I think, is a very important aspect to think through when you're building a good or beautiful looking report. Does the color consistently flow through the page? Does that are you using color consistently across different categories, right? If you're using country as a designator on the report page, are you consistently using a color or color palette that is pleasing and matches other parts of the visuals where color is required? I think one of the other aspects I would kind of point out here, that what I would point out here from a report that makes it look beautiful, I think less is more. So maybe there may be a lot of visual elements on the page to kind of make it robust and kind of have a lot of elements. But I'm thinking in the visual themselves, we're removing a lot of clutter. right? I'm trying to simplify the visuals down as simple as I possibly can. And I'm trying to remove a lot of what I would call cognitive load when you're building the visuals. So I think an aspect for me would be is like trying to make it as consistent as possible, but then removing as many of the noisy elements. So one example that I find that happens a lot is when you're using color palettes on a visual or defining a category as a color palette, you'll have like a bar chart, and the bar chart will have colors to it. And then you'll have another chart that has another list of colors, and you have two legends that are basically saying the same thing. So in some cases, you can actually remove the legends away. And so by removing that extra word visual language on the page, it simplifies more things, so the page becomes more consistent.
I don't
So
know
I
if
think
I
that's
agree with
another
you, Mike.
aspect that
I think we landed in the intro directly on what a beautiful report is, and everybody should just use our
definition. We're
Yeah,
done.
100%.
This is
Yeah.
it. Episode
100%.
over. Good
This
job.
is why you came here. It's why you came to listen to the Explicit Measure podcast, so you could definitively know what three guys
Use
in
your-
their rooms.
Well, initially,
But either
you're
way, but no, I like I say that in humor, but at the same time, I think if we're defining a beautiful report as something that is going to help an end user digest our insights faster and better,
Yeah.
and like then there are absolutely principles that we can use.
Okay. Yes.
A visualization, and you're bringing up several of those, right?
Sure.
Color. How do we absorb colors have meaning, right? And why this is an interesting conversation, I think, for this group and largely even for us as we've grown, is if we would have asked ourselves before Power BI, and the question we ask many people even now is, what is the percent of time you spend on data versus the percent of time you spend on the visualization and report experience? And I guarantee it's going to be like 80-20 or 90-10, right? Because this is the audience we typically interact with. And that's not a bad thing. But what it does bring front and center is there is a body of work that many people are engaged in that are and have expertise in, that usually find their way in UI, UX, and applications and stuff that we can tap into to help us understand how to do our jobs better and make a beautiful report. And part of those come from, it's science, right? Right? Like, we as humans,
Thanks,
Bill Nye. we know we absorb visuals faster than just straight data. And we've done a presentation on this a long time ago, right? Like a really fast way to showcase some of this is say, hey, here's a snippet of an Excel document, and it has Excel page table. It has 40 rows, and it's got 4 salespeople. One of them is Mike, and it's got a date range, like quarters, and it's the total sales, and it rolls up. It's like 40 rows. Tell me what the total sales of Mike is. The cognitive load is huge. People are going to find Mike on the row, figure out where it is. Okay. And the second visual is, even after that, let me highlight the 4 areas on this table that Mike's totals for those quarters show up. What's his total? Still a lot of cognitive load, right? As opposed to the final state of, if I want to look at total sales, here's a bar chart. It has the total sales. There's Mike. It takes much time to figure out what's the total sales for Mike. But it's a simple example, but that's very representative of what we're trying to do with an insightful report. Is if total sales for a group of people is the thing that is most impactful to us because we're going to make decisions off of it, I can give you a bar chart, and I can tag in the actual number right on that bar. So visually, you go to the biggest bar or the smallest bar, you know who it is, and you know what the dollars are.
And you're sorting the bar in almost an order too as well. So there's another to build on your idea there a bit more is,
correct.
If you order the bars in order of height, you can see, oh, Mike is the 3rd bar in, therefore he's the 3rd highest. Even though you don't actually know the numbers, you now can relatively pick out, salesman number 1, they're doing 2 times better. There's all these general, your mind tricks yourself or tries to automatically think through, what it's trying to compare things. It's literally what it does all the time, compare things. So if you can see the first bar is twice as large as the smallest bar on the chart, like, oh, Tommy's got twice as many sales as Seth. Like, there's just general insightful things just by looking at one chart, which you don't necessarily get from all the numbers all the time.
I fear that we're doing a bit of the report developer still, and we're not thinking so much from the design. And so allow me to take a bit of a hot take here. So,
Help yourself.
because I think you can easily have a beautiful report that doesn't help at all, that does not show you anything insightful. Because I think, at least when I'm referring to beautiful, it's design only. This does not mean that it's also a functional, helpful, insightful report. Beautiful by its nature.
Then let's just stop talking then.
Okay.
Because
no,
that
but
would be like we already defined that would be that wouldn't be a useful or like if beautiful means that we're going to be creating something that is driving insight. I can get behind this conversation and talk for the next 40 minutes. If you're saying that like beautiful means we just spent a bunch of time to make it look pretty, then yeah, it's a waste of time.
Okay, so you made it easy here, but I think, no.
What would be an example of that? What would be an example of a report that you would just be like, it's just good, it's just nice to look at?
See, I love that you guys immediately, though, before I go into that you guys, when we're talking beautiful, we're like, oh, it's an insightful report. That's beautiful. Well, no, I think from a pure design point of view, and I think, again, think of all the templates that you've seen on LinkedIn or other examples that you've seen that have taken a lot of time from a design only point of view. Forget.
Are you talking about all the baseball reports, Tommy, that you do? Are you trying to defend
those?
Them?
Are not beautiful. So those, those are purely functional. No, from a design point of view, from a purely aesthetic, it looks really nice point of view. It may not help, but it looks a lot better than that functional. It drives insights. I think there's a distinction there, and I think from a developer point of view, there's a bit from a UI UX point of view too. So at least we don't have to dive into that, but
no, but so let's continue on with the idea. And I was flippantly doing what I do to you all the time, which is just try to shut you down after
disregard.
Disregard and move on. Yeah, thanks, Seth. Yes.
Okay. So you're equating these templates or things that look really great, the design of a page, as being not meaningful.
It does not mean that it is meaningful by virtue. It's one of those. Just because it's beautiful doesn't mean it's insightful. It can be, but by virtue of beautiful does not mean that it's going to always be insightful. It's a design aesthetic point of view only.
So walk me through this. Like if I'm going to compare a background, right? And I say somebody who creates a background of the Grand Canyon of a beautiful sunset picture, and that's the background. And then they just throw a bunch of visuals onto it that are transparent so I can still see the background, but I can't see the data. I would agree with you. But are you saying that, or are you saying somebody spent a lot of time on a background visual as a template or something where it's created a look and feel that is very, very good, very, very easy for me to digest and understand, but it also looks fantastic? Are you saying both of these are beautiful without any meaning?
Absolutely. They can absolutely both be beautiful, but one could be insightful and the other could not be.
So the data and the visualization themselves are going to drive the insights. I completely agree with that. But choosing the right visual, using the right one, identify, like laying it out look and feel wise, as far as like large bars, small bars, like the data in it is going to drive the insights. The background, though, does also play a part in how well and how fast you can digest that information.
Right.
And that's, I guess, my point is, like, what is the difference, though? Because in the just show me an image, and it's the image is beautiful. It means something, but it's distracting because I can't see the data real well. That is completely different to me than somebody who spends a lot of time on building a framework from a background perspective that follows principles. And there are principles of spacing, of continuity, like how something lays out on a page so that I'm not distracted. I'm honed in on the place that I want to be. And that is completely different to me.
Okay. And that's fine. I think my point is one can make the argument you can have an incredible looking report with no context.
So let me go a little bit further here. So I think I had some thoughts here earlier, and I think this is a good time to bring those in now. Thinking through, okay, so we have like this concept of like doing data, there's models, there's visuals that we're talking about, and then we're integrating that with this concept of like insightfulness. Am I looking at the report? Does it create some sort of emotion that goes along with the report as well? So where I think I start, if you gave me a report that just had like, for example, right? I go out and look on these examples of Power BI reports or things that I see reports out there. There's even a whole bunch of design programs that let you build these really cool reports. There was this concept going around, and maybe it's still fairly popular. It's a frosted glass concept or something like that. It's the idea of like there's actually, like, to your point, Tommy, there's a very interesting background, and then the visuals kind of lay on this frosted glass layer. So it's kind of like a transparent kind of white, and then the visualization is represented on top of that frosted glass element, which then kind of makes it look like it's a really interesting dashboard. So I can say, on one hand, I feel like I've observed a lot of reports that are interesting to look at, but where the interest for me comes from is the intersection between the design side and the data side. And so one report that really sticks out in my mind was a report built by Miguel Myers, where he had used a combination of a background and a globe visual, where the visual didn't have a globe on it, but the background retained like a circle in the background. And that way, when you clicked on data elements, the country kind of like zoomed into focus. So it looked like the world or the globe was rotating as you were clicking on different things. And he had done it with a combination of a background and a foreground with the visual on side of it. So to me, yes, the report was kind of interesting to look at, but I really enjoy, for me, that when I think beautiful here is there's an intersection between the way the visuals interact and the connection between that against the background and the colors and the things in the background. So I can resonate with your point, Tommy, in the idea that, okay, I've got a dummy data set. I'm just going to build something that is meaningless. It just has gobbledygook data in there. It's like, lorem ipsum text on the page, and it's going to have, just charts that make no sense kind of on the page there. And it just visually looks appealing. There's really nothing to it. And then there's the other end of the spectrum that I think I would find is where I look at reports that are done by professionals, where I'm looking at there is a tight coupling between what they're producing and the actual version of the report. And so anything Armin, I can't remember his name off of LinkedIn, Armin Vanderstood.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Armin's amazing. What the stuff he comes up, he's like, hey, and again, I don't know when he has time to do this. I was like, hey, I was thinking about this, and I just happened to build a BMW kind of styled report, and like there's maybe one or two visuals on the page, but the way he's integrating them and designing them into like the visual side, to me, where I really get interested in this is when the line blurs so much that I can't determine what your report is doing, like which visuals you were using to make something occur. That's where I'm like, okay, to me, now we're like, yeah, I can click on this report. I can get some information out of it. It may not be insightful, but just be information. But when the line blurs so hard that I can't determine where one visual begins and one visual ends and how they built this, the other thing, I'm like, wow, that is a well thought out, well designed report. And maybe I'm thinking more of like well designed versus just beautiful.
Sure. Report. Well, and I think that's actually Armin's a great example here, where I have not built a report like Armin's ever. And not remotely close to, like, I think he has one, McDonald's one and Nike one. They're incredible.
But,
right.
It's literally like you could have taken that one and kind of gone, oh, I could have just built I could have taken this report and I could have dropped it in a web page, and it's such tight integration between the report and this. But to me, it's like this intersection of multiple things. It's like the intersection of the story of what he's trying to say. It's the intersection of a single chart, or the chart and how it interacts with a specific graphic. I'm going to see if I can get a couple of his posts up here because they're absolutely phenomenal. It is incredible.
Therein lies, I think, maybe the question I was trying to get at is that the minimum requirement, or like should we all be able to have that type of design skill? in a reports, because I think we could all agree those reports are beautiful.
I
They're
would
from a design incredible.
That's a good question, because I don't know if we're all. So this is also a challenge I think we face in this space, right? Because I'm thinking about how I've gotten to where I'm at now.
Yeah.
I started in the Excel land. Like Excel was what I did, and I made a couple charts there that were kind of taking some data and aggregating some simple things together. In Excel, the whole idea of the fact that I could click on something in a chart and it would change the data on a report page was like brand new to me, and it floored me when I saw it for the first time. I thought, this is incredible, the fact that you can do this. And even now, looking at like other tools in the market, the interactivity between visuals is very unique to Power BI. You can do it in other tools, but it seems like it's much more difficult to make that happen. And if you're going down the custom developer route and you want to build like a web page and put visuals on it, it's almost like it's very difficult to be able to gain filter context of a visual and pass that to other data elements on the page to have it render. So going from where I was typically used to building a single visual, stylizing that, and then having multiple pages with maybe a visual on it with tables of data, that's kind of where I came from. So to now have this whole new world, we're opening up this whole design, UI, UX area, was very exciting to me, because I really like this whole other arena that I've never been able to play in before. So I think what we're seeing here is, it's a migration of us moving away from just data to be data. We're actually walking into visualization and storytelling, and I think that's the part that's really intriguing to me here.
Okay, so halfway in, I think for me, it's important. No, I think it's important to articulate that the conversation for me is not like, beauty is not just aesthetics. It's not just throwing something on a report page that we think is looks good, right?
Yeah.
Which leads to the second point. If my meaning of a beautiful report is that it's the combination of insightful data and enhancing the end user experience through visualization techniques to absorb that faster, which is typically what we term as beautiful, because these are visual cues, visual things that we're trying to enhance an experience of, the better it looks with intent and having the data insights is what makes it beautiful. And I think, of course, those are part and parcel, right? It shouldn't, like, every time we have this conversation or presentation, this shouldn't be is the data, like, the data is the most important part. Well, the visualization is the most important part, because no, these things are together. And I think why this is an interesting conversation with data folks is because we don't spend a lot of time thinking about it or engaging in enough to know how to make the intentional decisions to enhance a report, right? I would agree. Anybody can create an insightful report, and you can put it on the report page and somebody's going to get meaning out of it. I guarantee you, if somebody knows visualization techniques and a lot of these principles around creating better visualizations and report pages, their report is going to be digested faster than your report, right? There's a body of work, right, that I am by no means an expert in, that precludes me to understand that there's principles I can follow, there's colors that mean things to people, there's ways in which I can create visualizations, and even scratching the surface in this realm, I think is very important for data people to do. Like, one of the things that we point out in that presentation is the Gestalt principles.
Yes.
I'm not going to go through them all, but look it up. There are applications to how you create like visuals, how you space them on a page. What does the visual itself look like? What is the data inside it? Are you showing all 30 bars, or should you limit it down to 10? Right? Like, there's decision points along all of this that I think should be driven as part of providing the insights, not necessarily, oh, I created this data and like this secondary visual thing is kind of like we should just throw it in there to make somebody feel good about it, right? I like, that's where you're trying to engage in the memory centers and how people digest information, because that's the power of these simplified visualizations. Is when people understand the meaning behind them, you can convey that information so much faster, and they're going to retain it better. That's the point of all of this aesthetic conversation around, like, what are all the different things we can do to make a report beautiful. It should be part and parcel to when you're building a report. It's not just the data. If you want to be super effective and you want to communicate what you want to an end user, they don't know the data the way that you do, right? And Tommy, to your point with thinking like the developer, I think all of us have the tendency to think like the developer of, well, everybody knows this data as well as I do. No, they don't, which is why they have a hard time digesting all of the things that we're rolling up for them in a lot of the conversation we have around what is the corresponding information button I need to provide? What is the context that I need to give them so that when they look at this simplified visual, they understand it? I think all that goes into this.
And honestly, I agree completely. Do you remember a long while ago in our episode, we talked about like the functional design where like a door handle already has an implication on what its purpose is. Do you remember this? This is a while ago on our podcast. We talked about this, where every design, the way something's designed has a purpose. Like I know if I see a door handle that basically has a handle on it, I know I have to pull it in a sense. I'm not pushing. Do you remember this at all? This was probably like in our episode 30. And it's in terms of the design of something implicates its application, so to speak. So yes, no? Are you with me at all? Remember this?
I think
Door
vaguely.
handle? Okay.
It's like 1,000
So-
episodes ago, but
Yeah, like about
I'll go
probably
with
like
it.
150 episodes ago. Anyways, the idea of our conversation was the design of something is not just an aesthetic thing. It has an implication. A door that has a handle tells me I need to pull it.
Yes,
Kind of thing.
correct.
And I already should know that by heart. You can make the door handle look nicer, right? You can have some nice design, put a little chrome on it, and maybe a matte, from a design point of view. But at the same point, it needs to follow some principles for me to know to pull it or to push the door, because there's some commonalities that we're all used to. And I think from a report point of view, as much as I love Armin's reports and as much as I love some of these templates that I see online, I don't want to say it's unnecessary, because they're definitely not. I think with Armin's reports, there's definitely some memory that can, like, you look at some of those reports and you're going to remember a lot of that. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is that same idea with the door handle for whatever that audience is, what the context is, and provide that application on what are they supposed to take away from that. And obviously there's the general best practices, the general data visualization theory of standards, but going above and beyond, where every report needs 10 objects per visual to provide something that you would never, like, that's not out of the box, so to speak. I don't think that's a necessity.
I would agree. I think there's going to be, there's always going to be this balance between how much effort should I put towards this report and what am I really trying to convey? Because there are reports that are going to be customer facing, or you're trying to really wow someone, or you're trying to really incorporate something there that you want to influence. And so I've put a couple links in here. So for those of you who are following along in the chat, I've put a couple of Armin's reports out there. Incredible. The I guess it was the Nike one that you were talking about, the Christian Dior report that he did was just phenomenal, and how he's showing things and putting graphics on the page there on top of visuals. It was really cool. So I also want to think through, like, at some point that doesn't make sense. Like every report doesn't need to be doing this incredibly beautiful thing. I think there are very much a spectrum of items where, okay, we're just going to do some very tactical things. We're just going to build reports that have very information rich stuff, right? I need to make decisions on things. So I think really a part of this is, I don't really know that I would feel that every report needs to be like over the top beautiful all the time. I do think there are some very low hanging fruits here that you can apply to very basic reports and start by making them very effective by simplifying and using some very simple techniques. So I think what we do as designers is we look at these very elaborate reports that have been very well designed. We start there, look at them, and say, okay, what of these reports can I extract from them that are simple in nature or simpler? And then what can I, from those very detailed things, what are the couple, 2 or 3 nuggets of that I can apply? And maybe it's a better navigation menu. Maybe it's a better indication around when things are highlighting so you can use drill through. Maybe it's better graphics or better images every so often, right? But you're basically taking the easiest, the lowest hanging fruits from those and incorporating them into your standard designs. Like one technique I'll just give you right now that I really like to implement on reports is I almost never build reports with white backgrounds anymore. All the reports I pretty much build now have a minimum of like a slight gray background. And then all the visuals themselves, I usually put on the page with a white background. So it adds some border or trim around where the visuals live. It's a very simple setting. You could set it up as a theme file, and then it just, every page has the same look and feel to it. So I really like that technique and being able to use that over and over again, because it really simplifies that initial experience of getting in, adding the Gestalt principle of proximity. And if I want 2 visuals to kind of link together, I just make them touch in the middle. And so the white border of both of them actually matches all the way around. So I think there's some, you can start picking up some very simple items that increases the readability of your report. And that's what I would kind of call, when we're talking about beautiful things, I don't know if we have to go all the way in to making it really look like a piece of artwork, but I think there's a lot of functional art you could put towards these things, where functional UI that still enhances the beauty of the report or the usefulness of the report. What do you guys think?
I would. I'm having a side conversation in the chat as well.
I
would say that to me, because what we're trying to produce with a report is insights and data, right? The choices we make within visuals and within the context and the setting of those visuals on a page should fall into an arena that the vast majority of all those decisions are based on enhancing that experience for the end user, right? With that in mind. And more often than not, the more of those creative applications of what we would consider visual enhancements should be done intentionally to foster that ingestion of information. If you're just arbitrarily making a bunch of changes to a report because you think it looks good, then I would agree that somebody's doing that purely for aesthetic, meaning like there's no real purpose behind it.
Yes.
But I think where it's important to make the distinction is it should be part of our repertoire of understanding some of those principles and some of those things that we could choose to make that better versus not knowing them at all and just saying my data is good enough.
Yes.
So I think there is a balance, but it would also be very difficult from an external user to say, okay, they made that choice for no reason versus, well, maybe there was, right? It, like the things that are very easy for people, and Tommy, to your point, the doorknob, right? Can somebody, choose a doorknob, install it, and functionally it works the same way? Yes. But if every doorknob in the house is black and you put a gold one on there, the person using it is still going to get the functional use out of it, and they're going to be annoyed as hell every single time that they use it because it's gold and not black, because the person installing it had no clue and didn't take into context anything else outside of the fact that you just need something functional, right? So as part of, I think, a beautiful report build or something that we're creating for end users, and you talk about this a lot, is like creating consistent app theming and like things that enhance a user's experience. A lot of that doesn't pop out as, oh my gosh, this is the most beautiful thing ever. Well thought out design a lot of the times just flows under the covers, and it makes it very easy for people to like just consume reports, which is what we're after, as opposed to where I think your mind is going, which is everything has to be just wow. Like I've never seen anything like this before. This is crazy. Like I don't think what I'm proposing is like, yeah, you spend the 2 weeks every single time to go create this amazing report, and every single report has to be amazing. But heck, if you build that template, it sure would be easy that every one of your reports is amazing.
Well, Seth, I am so glad you just said what you said, because this leads to a question that I was going to have, where I don't think, and I think we could all agree on this, you can't, if you're in an organization, create reports that are, in a sense, we'll call simplistic, and then all of a sudden randomly spit out one of Armin's reports as your next design. Right?
It won't happen. You'll never get there.
And no one's going to appreciate the design there, because they're
Mhm.
not going to know how to use it. And I think
Yes.
so Seth, that's a really good point about like, if you have a consistent layout at your company that people understand, well, yeah, it may not have that beautifulness to it or that aesthetic point of view, but it takes away what the purpose of it is. And if you all of a sudden walk in and go, hey, look at this Armin Noir report that we all of a sudden have for marketing, they're going to go, what is this?
Yeah.
And then you have to teach them. I think that's a huge point here, where that consistent layout, call functionality, is so much more important to what we're doing. Maybe for Armin, he has there's clients, and that's part of the service. So every audience is different, where that design is always going to be new, no matter who is building that report for. But if you're building consistently for the same audience, you can't just spit out something completely different. And then all of a sudden, that's the only report out there like that. You can't just have one random gold doorknob.
Yeah, I would. Well, yeah, exactly. You're creating your own gold doorknob, saying
Right.
all our doorknobs should be gold and
Right.
not black.
Yeah.
I think you do make a really good point, right? If you start going down a path where you realize that, hey, maybe your reports aren't so hot looking, or you can make 5-10 visual based decisions because you're starting to look into this to enhance your reports. I think you could use that as a stepping stone within the organization to say, hey, by the way, you guys, I think like we could have our reports look like this or this, and give some examples of like an enhanced, really good looking report that pulls forward some of that creativity, where you're choosing to make choices that enhance an end user's experience. But the important part about that would be, okay, people are instantly going to hopefully go, oh my goodness, like that looks so much better. That you would have a timeline, like how much extra time would you need in each report? And 2, what are the key things that you can point out on the page that you did that drew the end user in, right? There's a meaning behind what you're doing. You're not just like, hey, look at what I can do with reports now. They look so much better, right? Simple ones. Like your visuals are misaligned. Oh my God, it's so distracting. Like it's a pet peeve of mine, but it's very distracting.
Picasso would love that.
Is everything aligned? Are you spending the time to do that? Is it everything spaced appropriately? Can you make better choices around your visualizations? Do you have the right have you removed X and Y titles and things? Do you need them all? Like there's so many different things that you can do to make your report and visual look better, that if you spent an hour online looking at like the different ways you can do that, I guarantee you could go create a better version of what you built before, if you've never thought about the visual aspect of things before, right? And those are the things I think that are easy sells, from the standpoint that it's like, hey, maybe from this point forward, like let me enhance here, and then I'll see if I can go backwards and like reapply. But those are the types of things that I think make meaningful differences in the business, related to people using, like wanting to use and getting the insights as quickly as they can out of reporting.
I was gonna say, I like this conversation thread, and I think a lot of this is where I've looked at as I look up to other people who are doing very specific, highly stylized, and what I would call very beautiful reports. And I'm looking to try to digest, okay, how can I learn from those and incorporate pieces of this that are easy to produce but add a lot of value. And I'm always looking for like, what can I pluck from those knowledge libraries essentially, and how can I incorporate it into my reports to make it better to design? So I feel like a lot of this is extremely relevant, and again, kind of being more like that lifelong learner. I never even considered reports being this visual in nature to begin with. Like it never even occurred to me until I started getting into Power BI much deeper. And then I started seeing what other people were producing, and it pushed me to become more more focused on the
Right.
UI UX design of those reports.
Or Mike, and you said this on one of our other podcasts, has always stuck with me, that data to ink ratio theory. You
Yes.
could go the complete other way.
It's not my theory, it's someone else's.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if it was
Data to
yours,
ink
but
ratio. Yeah.
yeah, but you could go completely the other route here and go the minimalistic approach where you want to take that data to ink theory where you can't have as much ink as you have a data, and I'm sure you're going to share it. But the idea is,
Yep.
the more ink you have, it will take away from the data. So there is a ratio that you want to get. Obviously, this applies more with newspapers, and I think that there's a whole other design point of view from a beautiful, or call it just a nice design point of view where you're not putting in the background. Again, it's minimalistic. It's more Apple design, so to speak. That also makes a big impact as well.
I mean, if
And
you think about, I mean, the
which is
whole
more
concept,
functional, but
yeah. So that, like you said, a newspaper, like it doesn't really necessarily apply. I mean,
right.
the mental model would be like, okay, imagine you had a printer, right? And let's imagine that ink. Today you buy ink there, it's like $20, right? You get $20. If I wish ink was $20, but if you got ink and there was $20, the ink was cheap, you wouldn't care. You would just kind of print whatever you want to print. Consume the ink, no big deal, move on. But when you start looking at, start increasing the price of that ink, right? If to fill your inkjet printer cost $1,000, $10,000, if you keep increasing the price of the ink to put on the page, you will think, and this is what I think Greg Baldini was kind of commenting earlier, was, every pixel will count. Like if that pixel or if that piece of ink or that little bit of extra effort I'm putting on the page, if that's not contributing to adding value to the user, do I even put it there? And so it's being hypercritical around all of those things. And is this something that's, whatever I'm adding, is it adding value or a distraction? And you kind of, if you weigh many more of your decisions like that, I think what you do is you find out you come out with a better product in general by weighing, okay, I'm going to add this background image. Is this helping or hurting? Okay, it looks like it's helping. Okay, great. Let's put some visuals on it. Okay, are these visuals helping or hurting? Okay, you can kind of make those judgment calls. Are they aligned? Is that helping or hurting? And I think that's kind of like, if you go through that evaluation, you can really dial back and simplify your report. And that's when you start really making some impacts. I think that, and you have to study this. Like, this is something that just doesn't come, I think, naturally. I think you have to spend some time and work on this as well.
No, I'm going to agree with. I'm going to disagree with Kevin. Kevin in the chat says the time to deliver impacts the beauty of the report as well. No, I don't believe that at all. There's a business value on whether the business chooses to allow you to create these additional end user ingestion mechanisms in your report. But if you're just cranking out data, like it. I don't agree with it. Right? Like there's a balance that I think, Mike, is you represent as a good method to get into building better, more beautiful reports. In that, is it going to be useful? Right?
Yes.
Is this a good decision or not? Am I making this for a purpose as opposed to just applying a color? Right? Like those are the incremental steps that you can start to include. But whether or not the business wants to invest in that fully is also part of, I would say, the individual contributor or the manager or whatever level pushing pushing to do it because there is meaning behind it. If I can represent that, I can change my reports where I spend all of this time on the data model, all of these things that nobody sees, nor do they care about. If I can justify all that, I can't justify all the things that could impact the end user consuming this data faster. Like that's the like, maybe we just haven't done that, right? Like, so if I can't make an argument, like I would say change the mode and say, like, figure out what are some of these things that we can do. And is that an additional 4 hours? Is it an additional 8 hours? Is it an additional 2 days? If I can justify to the business that, listen, I can do this data stuff and I can produce these these numbers for you, and I can put them on a page, but these extra 2 days are going to ensure that all of our end users are going to be able to just be self-sufficient, love what they're seeing, blah, 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 like all of these other reasons, of course they would say, wait a minute, if you can do this and then all these other added benefits like are part of that. Oh, okay. Well, that makes that makes total sense. And I think part of my argument in here and where I get passionate is we're just not thinking about them. We're not bringing them into reporting and making a beautiful report. We're okay with being the data guys and putting just insights and some of these numbers out in front of people. And all of the visualization aspects are an afterthought. So we're forcing that on the end user to consume because they don't have a choice.
Yes, I would agree.
I think that's maybe a conversation for another day. And Seth, I love that. I think someone asked it on the chat too. Like, do report consumers want a beautiful report too? And I think that's a whole other question.
What do
a
they
whole other
want?
can of worms, right?
I think they want. I think yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, they may not call it a beautiful report, but they want to be able to use it. Like your usage metrics.
That's all functionality then.
Yes, but if it's not decent looking, I mean, yeah, you can use a report that's not functional. I think you won't get the legs. I think the value and time you put into things won't necessarily get you where you want to go unless you put some time and thought into it. Again,
More functional doesn't mean less design, though.
Agree. What I'm saying is I think the mentality for me is I'm creating, and I keep using this language with clients as well. We keep talking about like it's a data application. It's way more than I'm just displaying information and giving you an insight. We're building you like a little mini app around your data. And so if I talk about a data application, I think people resonate more with that effort that I'm putting into it because it really is. It's not just presenting a table of data. If you want just a table of data, I'll give you Data Hub and go build your own, go grab some columns, stick them together, boom, done. You have your table of data. So again, I think part of the conversation here is, are we looking for insights on data or are we looking for access to data? So if we're just looking for access to data, that's a different kind of story. The access to data element is pages and tables of data. You have a data model, I just need to access it, get the data out of it. That's an entirely different use story than I need insights on my information. I know the questions I'm going to ask, and I'm going to ask those questions every week or every day. I'm managing to those questions. That's a different kind of need, and I think that is where you start spending more time around the insightfulness of your report. You start working the UI UX. You make it functional and decent to look at. Anyways, I think we've burned through a particularly good time at this point. Any other final thoughts? Maybe we should wrap here before we get down to another conversation. We spent another hour here going down another rabbit hole, potentially.
I don't know. Beautiful is creating an accurate, insightful report that can be consumed quickly and easily by the end user. And a lot of the time and effort spent in the visual realms to make something look good typically fall into that you're spending time in the quickly and easy consumption aspects of that.
Yeah.
How you decide to separate out that time and or sell that to the business, parse that however you will.
So what everyone could have done instead of listening to us yammer for about an hour and talking here and stuff like that, you could have just gone over to Chat GPT and asked the very simple question. Because I did send this out to the guys. I was like, what makes a report visual beautiful in a report? And there are several factors: clarity, relevance, simplicity, color and contrast, consistency, and the use of space. We've kind of been talking about all these areas. So you could have done this in about 3 minutes or so. Just go to ChatGPT, ask them what the answer was, and skip the whole podcast. But if you hung around, that means you like the entertainment here and you're helping to learn something else. So thank you for joining us for the full 30 minutes or an hour, however long you were participating with us. We really appreciate your listenership. We hope you got some insightful pieces out of this. If anything else, we would really love it if you found value here. If you like this episode, if we thought that the topic here was relevant, we'd really love it if you would share this with somebody else, either internally, if you're talking about data and data related things. We'd love it if you'd be able to share this with somebody else, just to give them some more insight around data things that you're doing as well. Anyways, where else can you find the podcast, Tommy?
You can find that anywhere it's available: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts. Make sure to subscribe. If you want to join the conversation live, you can. If you're wondering what we're talking about with the chat, you can do so 7:30 a.m. Central. Follow Power BI Tips on YouTube and LinkedIn.
We appreciate you all very much, and thank you very much and have a great Tuesday.